Hello and welcome back to that Eurovision site, Eurovision with a slice of life. I'm Angus, still a professional he him pronoun user, and this time I'm joined by,
Hello, I'm Nicklas.
and we'll be talking about the all-new logo that the EBU dropped today to show off all things Eurovision. Clicking on this video, you've probably already seen the logo, least of all the thumbnail. And we have thoughts.
We do indeed.
What was your first take when you saw the new logo?
I think my first thought was soft and corporate. And that's not a good look for anyone. I think one of the first things that came to mind for me as someone who I have dabbled a bit in graphic design. I'm not a professional graphic designer, but I've done some and I do a little bit of it in my job as well. And there is this within the graphic design community, a lot of people talk about what's called the Algeria art or corporate Memphis, which is this design language that's think something like the weirdly proportionate people drawings of people that you see on Facebook or places like that. It's this art that often gets criticized for being something that feels very corporate, trying to be like, we're human, we're just like you, we appreciate everyone. And that's what I feel with this logo. It feels something straight out of a circus. I've seen people comparing it to like fast food brands or whatever. And I think that's the biggest issue with this. It feels extremely corporate. And in a time and place where people are complaining about the EBU and feeling like they don't listen to fan feedback and all these things, making this shift to something that takes away a lot of the art style that Eurovision has always had. I think that's just it's a bad choice at this time, especially right now.
Yeah, it feels very cold and impersonal, and I understand there will always be like the reaction of like, oh, you don't like change. And I mean that's also true. But it's also the question like, why are we making this change? And on top of that, also, so what are you trying to signify with this change? And does feel very much like both a little bit of a distraction of everything going on because more so than usual, I would say Eurovision is still in the general conversation, but not necessarily in the way that the EBU or us Euro fans would like it to be. And then giving it a fresh face does make sense in some ways to also try to just move on. But at the same time, after the whole criticism also about United by Music being now the permanent slogan, and now like really being like, oh, we now have a permanent new logo. What it feels like with how they're talking about the 70 and how they also want to incorporate that multicolor heart throughout other events. It just doesn't feel quite right. Like it wasn't really fun to see Eurovision change every year, even if we had the standard logo, but how different countries build on it, how different events also work with it, and now just like, oh, we now just have this thing. And you're right, it feels very much like that cold corporate art. It also feels a little bit somebody holding like a 70s disco now, like, oh, this is disco, especially for people in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, like relive your glory days kind of thing. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but for something as big as Eurovision and also as culturally diverse as Eurovision, and also something that does try to be new because it is a new lineup every year, maybe not quite the vibe that I would want to see um from the organization.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also one of the things is that the thing that makes Eurovision special is that it feels so extremely European and that it's always been like one of the things that you see that feels so distinctly European. And you can always tell, or at least you could in the past, it felt very clear that now we're in Eastern Europe, now we're in Western Europe, now we're in Northern Europe. And this direction that they've taken for the past couple of years, where they've gotten away with like the emblems that I've always called them, the logos that changed every year. They've gotten away with that in recent years. They've created this generic branding with generic colors that they use in off seasons. And the thing about all those is that none of that feels very distinctly European, and it doesn't feel like it has that Eurovision DNA in it. Instead, it feels like everything else you see on social media. And I get if you want to grow a brand, you want to look like everything else. But I think what the people currently in charge are missing is the fact that what makes Eurovision Eurovision is that it is so unapologetically European, and that it is its own thing. And that's what people gravitate to because it is something different than the millions of other singing competitions we have. And they're losing that more and more, especially if we're going to see this branding be more featured and that we won't get such big redesigns and such big host city designs every year, which they haven't said specifically that they're not going to do new designs every year like we've always been used to. But if you read between the lines, it kind of sounds like that we're going to get something where we have the same kind of like general style that we see now, and then the colors and things may shift a little bit. And I think that's definitely the wrong direction to take because it means that you won't have that host city identity in it.
Absolutely. Just as you were saying it, I also slowly came to the realization, and it's even funnier considering everything that has changed in the EBU. But this does still also fall in line with the complaint that some people in the community, and I've been one of the people who sometimes complained about this, sometimes unfairly, but about the so-called Melfestification of Eurovision, where it's sort of like, so Melfest is arguably the biggest national final, so we are trying to copy that because it's the most commercially successful. You can debate about that, and it has its own issues that even SVT will be honest about. But it does feel like, oh, we now have this heart that changes color and that we'll be using for everything. I'm like, this screams Melfest. This screams like loss of any real, yeah, any identity, both of place but also of time. Like if you go back to the old Eurovision logos, even of recent years, you really see a shift in cultural signifiers of just how, 2018, 19, 2017 and 18 had very specific style of logos. And then I'd say that 2019 through 2022 sort of also incorporate like this small family of style. And then we move on again, for example. And it's this fun thing that we're now just missing. Maybe this is the new style language and design language, but yeah, it just misses that little spark that we used to have. That just is part of what makes Eurovision so fun. Um, Another thing that a lot of people have been talking about is the font, what they're doing with the font, and there are two distinct things going on. First of all, you have the way they represent the motto United by Music, but you also have how they write Eurovision Song Contest. I want to dig into that first because it's an absolute mess of upper and lowercase. It starts with a lowercase e, but then they use a uppercase E for contest. There's an uppercase R and uppercase G, but the ends are lowercase, and it's not pleasing to look at, and it's difficult to read.
Yeah, and it's also not the thing about it is the way that it's kind of like it's this kind of arch almost, but it just makes it look uneven because the gap between song and contest is not under the heart. And it's always been because song contest has always been smaller, so you could make it look more symmetrical. Now it just looks unsymmetrical because it shifts like that. And I think making Eurovision and song contest making that the same height and width and everything when it's so often just referred to as Eurovision doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot there going on. You've already said it with the uppercase and lowercase. It just makes it look weird because you stop and you think twice about it. And a good logo is something that is just there in the background. It's there to move everything else along. This is something where the more you look at it, the more you start to think, oh, it looks kind of warped. Oh, did they put this on wrong? Did they mess with the file or whatever? And that's just not a good look. But unfortunately, we do see it more often. I feel like that people are trying to do something different. And that's what this feels like. It's trying to be different for the sake of being different. And I don't like that about it because I think Eurovision in itself was a strong brand and the look was a strong brand, and the fact that they've kept the Eurovision heart pretty similar, it's a little bit thicker but it's more or less the same, also shows that they do get that a lot of the branding is that hard. So it's good that they've kept that. If they've changed that up, I think it would have been a completely different conversation because that wouldn't have worked. And just speaking about the heart just for a second, because you just mentioned Melfest, and all that got me thinking when you said that was, are we going to get Melfest styled voting, app voting next year? Because the way that they're promoting the heart now, I mean, it's possible. If it happens, you heard it here first.
It's yeah, who knows what will happen, but
Yeah.
the yeah, the vibes are there. And you're right, the this logo does commit the one cardinal sin any logo can do, and it is your first reaction is to think about it because you have to process it, and that has to do with the upper and lower casing, it has to do with the as how it's asymmetric. That in for this year, hopefully not for other years, but at least for this year, the heart both stat is symbolic for the letter V, but also for a zero, and potentially also for other things. It makes you engage your brain, which is not what a logo should do. It's always one of my favorite things, and it's also a personal anecdote. The old F1 logo, it said F1, but in the negative space in the logo, it actually showed a Formula One car. And I didn't realize that until they basically stopped using that logo, and that's true for a lot of people. But well, once you see it, it's like that's so obvious. How didn't I see that? But it's just this great little thing that you can do with logos and how you can have fun with it. Um and build an identity. Like that is a very iconic logo that was used for like decades. And I mean, the old identity of Eurovision that we've been using so far that we've gotten used to arguably dates back to 2004. It had some updates here and there, minor ones, but the basic Eurovision written out with the V being a heart that has like the country's flag in it dates back to 2004, roughly. Yeah, I do like that we have now stuff that you can do more with, and as such, just updating the heart to make it possible to work with 3D and do more with colors. Not a bad idea. The entire execution of it and then forcing it into every part that a heart can show up in the logo isn't quite it. And then we haven't gotten into whatever's going on with United by Music. I don't know what's going on with that font. Why are they used coffee cups?
Yeah, I was just about to say that it's a coffee cup. I will say though, if I should give this just the tiniest bit of credit, I do think that the usage of color works a lot better than it did previously. The the old generic Eurovision style, I've called that pastel vomit because the colors were horrible and did not work great together, and it was way too bright if you were watching Eurovision videos in the middle of the night. Don't do it. This looks much cleaner. I will say that the logo is a mess, but everything else around it and the animation that they've done with the heart with the 70, that looks clean. If we can get more of that, great. But the logo, that's just not
Yeah.
working.
Yeah, I will commend them for this. This is one of the few things Eurovision has done in recent years from like it looks good standing still and in motion. With a lot of the graphics, especially from the last 2 years, a lot of the graphics packages they create, they looked good in motion, but a lot of the time you would see them in a freeze frame or standing still because it's on the poster, it's on the thumbnail, it's this, it's that. And they just then didn't look good. I hope that like and this at least has a bit of both, even if I will say putting those colors on a dark blue background is a bit of an accessibility nightmare. It can be difficult to read for people who don't have issues with color blindness or with sight, and this just it doesn't help. But at least it's something, and it's yeah, I do like that you can do the multiple colors with it, and that they've actively approached it with that in mind. Um, we shall see. Martin Green, the director of the Eurovision Song Contest, did say that there will be more of the new brand identity that we'll see ahead of the new contest. So I'm curious if they will roll out more or just slap this onto everything they can slap a sticker on.
I mean, it's a good way to get people to buy new merch because they have to update everything.
Exactly.
That's marketing, baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I think the thing is I get why they're doing it now because they are at a point where they're trying to figure out what do they want the Eurovision branding to be. And there is a lot of new people coming in and there's a lot of new ideas and Eurovision as a brand have taken off in recent years and also quicker than I think a lot of the EBU expected. I think they could have done a lot with just doing small revisions, just like they did in 2015. And I think people would have been a lot happier. It is a time where people are very vulnerable to change at the Eurovision. So making such a big change, I mean, we're all going to get used to it eventually. This is just us complaining because we love to complain. We should complain. Nothing's going to change. They're not going to roll it back, and we'll get used to it in a couple of years' time. But I think it is a strange time for the Eurovision Song Contest. There's a lot of changes going on, and some of it will stick, some of it won't, and we'll just have to wait and see how it looks. I can't really imagine how it's going to look with having the host city below it, with it being so warped and everything, but we'll see how they manage to pull it off. We'll hopefully and probably see that very soon.
Yeah, hopefully. It will also be interesting to see what to do for the 75th year. As such, this is a great move. Like you can have this logo for 5 years. Well, we're starting already now, so it's for four contests for 5 years. And then for 75, the big contest, you can do something new again and exciting and then see if people like it and either keep it as a one-off or make it more permanent. So they do have that space to play around in. But yeah, I'm, I think in the end, yeah, as you say, there's a lot of complaining right now. There are two things that Eurovision fans are good at, ranking things and complaining. Uh,
Yes.
but yeah, it's as such, it's fine. It just, as you say, there's a lot of resistance to change for multiple reasons, especially right now within the Eurovision fandom and Eurovision community at large. I completely understand, and I at least partially agree with that as well. So we shall just see how things develop.
We
But
shall. I think my final thoughts are bring back full creative control from the host broadcaster. I want to see something as iconic and chaotic as Helsinki 2007 again.
ex
Please.
just
Please.
just give us, or even, I mean, and that's late, and that's when the EB already really had a hand in it. But Rotterdam 2021, I know there's plenty of things they also did weird or even wrong, but at least they were trying. And obviously,
Yeah.
they had opportunity and reason to. But that was fun. It was fun. At least you had something to talk about,
Yeah.
and I do think that was it. It really helped just sell the contest again, and I hope we get a bit more of that, giving some control to the broadcaster. Um, it can even be in collaboration with other broadcasters. They can just ask like the previous ones instead of just the head of the EBU. Sort of like, hey, how did you do that? And what would you have changed? Because it is just a slightly different view that each channel has of the broadcast of the contest compared to just the head of Eurovision, who obviously it has its positives and negatives to just have him as the main consultant, as it were.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that's pretty much everything there is to say on this new logo, unless Martin Green or someone else from the EBU comes out with a new statement in the next week. So on that note, thank you so much everyone for watching. Thank you, Nicklas, for yapping with me about the new logo. If you're on this YouTube channel and you haven't been here before, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe. Everyone else, also don't forget to leave a comment, like this video, share it with your friends. You can find us on all the social media pages that you have ever dreamt of, and even the ones you've forgotten about, as at that Eurosite. We do a podcast which you can find here and on your favorite podcast apps, where you can just listen to us yap about countries, the history of Eurovision of different years, some random topics like German national finals in the early 2010s, because that's apparently something we need to dig into. Don't forget to come back to this YouTube channel. Even now in the off season, we're making tons of videos. There's a video somewhere in the next few months coming out about different channel logos of competing broadcasters. So that's sort of topical with this. But also we did a D&D game, which may or may not have is already out at this point, and a ton of other videos discussing Eurovision and stuff only vaguely connected to it. So yeah, thank you so much for watching and goodbye.